So welcome everybody to this evening's conference with Le Cercle des Langues. Tonight we will be discussing debating in English, how to defend your opinion, the structures and vocabulary of argument. This evening's conference is a level B1 to B2. The conference will last for 25 minutes, and for the last 5 minutes, we will have a question and answer moment. Please feel free to either put your questions into the chat or use a piece of paper so that we can have a look at it when we are done. Let's begin. In today's conference, we will look at 4 parts. The first would be understanding debating. The second will be key structures to express opinions and arguments. The third will be vocabulary for debating and persuasion. And the last, how to build strong arguments. So number 1, understanding debating. So what is a debate? A debate is a formal or informal discussion where people express opposite opinions. You support your idea with reasons, examples, and evidence. Why do we learn to debate in English? Getting better at debating will help you to practice critical thinking, improve your fluency, learn to listen actively, and it will help you build confidence when you are speaking. So what are some of the rules of a good debate? The first would be to listen respectfully. The second, speak clearly. The third, you use facts or logic. And the fourth, and probably the most important, is that we stay polite. We are not emotional. So let's first look at how we structure a mini argument. Now, argument, it can be seen as a dispute en français, but an argument can also be something that you create to prove your point. So there are 2 meanings. So if we say a mini argument, it's not the same meaning as a mini fight or a dispute. It's not. It is creating a solid, structured proof of your opinion. So when getting ready for a debate, take the time to think about this structure. The first part, your opinion. The second, a reason. The third, an example. Number 4, a counter argument. And number 5, a conclusion. So, key structures to express opinions and arguments. So, sentence starters for your opinion. You could say, I believe that, in my opinion, from my point of view, I'd argue that, so I would argue that, or from my perspective. For example, from my perspective, remote work increases productivity because it allows people to focus without office distractions. When we are giving reasons and examples, we could use the word because or since. For example, for instance, this is because or this is mainly because. For example, I think social media is dangerous because it increases anxiety in teens. We can use the same example with since. Since the invention of social media, teenagers have been more anxious. When you agree or when you disagree, we do that politely. And what is that way? We could say, I totally agree. That's a good point. But I see what you mean. However, I'm not so sure about that. I got your point of view, but. So the biggest idea is to let the other person know that you understand. So that you understand their point of view, however you feel differently. Telling someone that you understand helps the other person feel heard and understood. So an example would be, that's a good point, but some people feel isolated and less motivated when working from home. We can also express contrasting ideas. For example, on the other hand, or however, although, even though, on the contrary. For example, the proposal is interesting. However, it may be too expensive for our current budget. So let's look at a real example. We're going to take some time to analyze the following conversation. Alex says, I believe that social media has more negative effects than positive ones. For example, it often leads to cyberbullying and unrealistic body standards. Jamie says, I see what you mean. However, I'd argue that social media can also be a powerful tool for self-expression and staying connected with friends. Alex says, from my point of view, the risks still outweigh the benefits. This is mainly because teenagers spend too much time comparing themselves to others online. Jamie says, that's a good point, but it also depends on how it's used. For instance, some people follow educational pages or learn new skills through social platforms. Alex responds, on the other hand, many teens don't use social media in that way. In my opinion, the constant scrolling and pressure to post create more stress than value. Jamie replies, I totally agree that there are risks. However, I think with proper guidance and limits, social media can be used in a healthy way. So before we carry on, as we look at the debate, what do we notice? We notice that the first thing is there is mutual respect. We are acknowledging, we are saying that we see the side of the other person, but we are using certain words such as however, or from my point of view, for instance, or in my opinion, to show them the side that we agree on. So what is some of the vocabulary that we can use for debating and persuasion? So we've got debate verbs, and here are the top 10. We talk about argue or claim, suggest, propose, support, oppose, believe, agree, disagree, and challenge. it's good to know that among these verbs, they are all regular verbs. That means they all end with ed in the past. You also have persuasive adjectives and adverbs. For example, something is clear, or the argument is strong, it's logical, or it's fair, it's important, or it's incredibly important, absolutely, or completely. An example, we should forbid junk food at school. When we say we should forbid junk food at school, we are talking about a modal verb. And that modal verb are the verbs that help us sound a particular way. For example, it either expresses obligation, it expresses necessity, it expresses possibility, or it expresses politeness. Now, here with these modal verbs, we are looking at persuasion. For example, should. Should helps us advise someone on what to do. Must is more of an obligation. Might, it's about possibility. Could is another verb of possibility or capacity. And then would is talking about the conditional. So these are verbs that can help one sound more persuasive. We can also use rhetorical questions, such as, isn't it obvious that? Don't we all want a better future? Can we really ignore the facts any longer? Don't you think this affects all of us? Isn't it clear that action is needed? Aren't we all responsible for this? So rhetorical questions allow the audience to think about what you are saying. But what makes a rhetorical question very powerful is that the audience member feels as though you are asking them. We can also boost our arguments in using certain sentences. For example, it is undeniable that, there is no doubt that, we must acknowledge that, the truth is that, studies have shown that, experts agree that. So how do we build strong arguments? We keep the PEE model in mind. So point, evidence, explanation. The point is your opinion. What do you think? We then present the evidence, a fact or an example. And then we explain. We explain why it matters, the PEE model. So let's debate. Is it better to study online or in person? Give your opinion, a reason, and one example. So those of you who feel free and want to partake, please put your opinion in the chat. Remember, you give your opinion, you give a reason, and you give an example. So just to remember, opinion, a fact, and why it matters, the PEE model. I will give you a few minutes and we will check the chat for certain responses. So is it better to study online or in person? Christoph says, oh, these are wonderful opinions. Thank you so much, everyone. Christoph says, in my opinion, the English language is useful in globalized world. The studies have shown this fact. Okay. Barbara says, I think we have to do both models to learn better. We need to study face to face and also online. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Lisa says, in my opinion, I think it's better to study online because you can take lessons everywhere over the world or everywhere around the world. Absolutely. Marie says, online because it's easy to organize. Raymond says, today it's better to study online. So we don't have to use a car, a train, or a bus to go to school. Thank you, Raymond. Ford says, in person, it's more natural to speak between each other. For example, when in person, there's no issue with internet connection. Wonderful argument. Delphine says, in my opinion, it's more interesting to work in person because it's easier to talk to your colleagues. Wonderful. Thank you, Delphine. Hélène says, I agree with Marie. Thank you so much. Let's see. Madame ou Monsieur Chanteau, je suis désolée, je suis pas trop sûre de votre prénom, mais they both can be well. In my opinion, if the student is attentive, he could prefer online. Beautiful example. Christophe says, I agree with Raymond. Online is more convenient. Wonderful. So we have so many different opinions and everyone is completely within their right. What's good is that when we give our opinion, we use the PEE model to make our argument stronger. Our opinion, a fact or an example, and why it is important. Thank you, everyone, for participating. So I believe school uniforms should be optional. So this is our example. The evidence, a study showed students feel more free without uniforms. The explanation, this freedom boosts self-confidence and creativity. So the explanation is, why does this evidence show that? Important tips to remember is to stay calm and confident. Use a clear voice. Breathe slowly. Don't panic if someone disagrees. And practice with topics that you know. The do's and don'ts of debating are: do, listen to others. Do, respect the time. Don't, interrupt. And don't attack people, only the ideas. A final practice tip could be, if you feel comfortable, record yourself. Number 2, you can watch debates in English. For example, we have youth debates and we have TED educational debates. And number 3, practice in pairs or in small groups. In conclusion, debating in English is a powerful way to improve your speaking skills. Express your opinions clearly and build confidence. By using the right structures, vocabulary, and techniques, you can defend your ideas respectfully and convincingly. Remember, a good debate is not about winning. It's about listening, thinking, and communicating effectively. So don't be afraid to speak up, take a stand, and enjoy the challenge of sharing your voice in English. So thank you, everybody, for joining me for this evening's conference. I hope it was really helpful for you. And remember that you have the PDF in the chat. So please do download it before you leave. Do you have any questions or comments that you would like to make before we leave this evening's conference?
Yes.
Yes, please share.
Hi, Chanel. I'm Maxence.
Hi, how are you, Maxence?
Very good, and you?
Good, thank you.
I just have a question regarding might and could.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for help us to choose between both of them?
Yes, absolutely. Might is more, if you think about the word peut-être.
Okay.
Might is helping you say that it's a possibility. Okay. Whereas could is more of a possibility, but in a way to say it's a suggestion. So for example, I could use it in a conditional, and I could use it in a, this is what we could do this evening. To be very honest with you, could is a lot, I would say, and this is a personal opinion, I would use could to open the floor to suggestion.
Okay.
If I say we might go out tonight, it's really leaning more on peut-être. Okay? So imagine, en français, on dit peut-être, la différence entre peut-être et pourrait.
Okay.
You see, that is really the difference between the two. I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, my absolute pleasure. Are there any other questions? No? We all good? So everybody have a wonderful weekend and a good public holiday on Monday. And I will see you next week, Friday, for another conference with Le Cercle des Langues. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend too.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.